I want to talk today about a really magical shamanic process called soul retrieval. 20 years ago, I fell in love with ayahuasca and began working with her shortly thereafter, learning the art of ayahuasca and ceremony to become an ayahuasca. It took me many, many years. I still don't know what I'm doing, and I'm learning something new every single time I sit with her. But when we got to, in my training, the part of learning more about the intentional work of soul retrieval, it was one of my favorite aspects. So let me define what I mean by soul retrieval first and foremost. Shamanic wisdoms tell us that when we go through traumas in our lives, oftentimes parts of our soul, which is the energetic essence of who we are, they fragment and sometimes leave the immediate field of our energy space because it's traumatic. Especially if we go through something that causes disassociation or just any sort of like fragmentation that happens in our psyches, the same fragmentation can happen in our souls. And then we can live our lives feeling in many ways incomplete. Sometimes we use language like, I don't feel like myself, when we have had fragmented parts of ourselves. Interestingly enough, many of us go through this even in the birth process. Ayahuasca likes to reflect that sometimes the greatest trauma that we go through as individuals is birth itself. It's not an easy process, especially these days when we sterilize it and go to the C-section process almost automatically. There's just so much trauma that can happen in that, so we can literally begin our lives without the full extent of our energy, our essence. So soul retrieval in the shamanic space is the art of calling back in those parts of ourselves. It is an amazing, beautifully intentional process that has a couple of core elements involved in it, and this is primarily, I'm speaking about the ayahuasca ceremony space. So when I know somebody, I can feel somebody has deep fragmentation of their souls, the first thing that I need to make sure feels aligned before calling back in those parts of themselves is that they've done the work of healing from the wounding, processing the emotions, which is itself a purification process. Because if we call in parts of ourselves back to a space that is still vibrating in the trauma that made it leave, it's not going to stay very long, right? So we want to clean house, and that's what plant medicines like ayahuasca are so great at, mushrooms as well, is helping us to really be with the traumas, the emotions, the stuck energies, and move them. That's what emotion is, energy and motion, right? So once we start to create space, essentially, for these parts of ourselves to come back in, we know that the potential for those parts to stay is now greatly increased. So if I've worked with somebody in this space and I know that they've been doing this work, and in that portal with Aya, I feel an invitation from her and the person's soul to bring back in a piece or more of that fragmentation, then we do that. Like in shamanism, it's always the beginning stage of anything we do is through the power of intention. So to first be super intentional and to connect with that individual, you've got to have a connection with the soul of that individual and the medicine in order for this alchemy to exist and to come together. There also needs to be a willingness, and this may sound weird, but a willingness for the individual to have this piece come home. It isn't always the case that the soul is ready to bring back pieces of themselves. Why? Because the game increases in terms of our accountability to show up authentically when we bring these pieces back in. So for example, if we bring back a piece of ourselves that schismed as a result of a violent relationship, let's say, if we are in a relationship that still matches that violence of that vibration of violence, which we do a lot, right? We repeat ourselves. That part of our soul is not ready to come back, and the rest of us knows that. There's something deep inside, a wisdom that says, no, I'm not ready to bring that back in, because by bringing that piece back in, we are more likely to be accountable for leaving the relationship, which is a good thing, but it can only happen when we're ready, right? So there is a divine timing to this, but the act of soul retrieval is when a shamanically trained individual, and in my case works with the plant medicine and the individual, to call back in, to sing, to match the vibration of what that soul wants to feel, and to bring them home. Like it's a very magnetic process, and it's really spectacular when it comes together, because in the aftermath, the individual who experiences a soul retrieval feels more like themselves. And there are a few things I think are more powerful and beautiful for us to feel than truly feeling like the essence that we are, that we're connected to our energy, our souls. So if you have this opportunity or calling, if you sit with ayahuasca regularly, especially with somebody who has been trained to do this sort of thing, you can make it an intention. You can't force a soul retrieval, but to allow the invitation and just to plant the seed with your facilitator of, hey, I would love some soul retrieval. It is absolutely life-changing. So may all of you get more of your essence back with every sit that you do, and be safe and well out there. If you have questions about any of this, please hit me in comments, but thank you so much for listening.